Just as a quick reminder, the VCure is now available to order at Vivosun.com and Amazon stores, and you can save up to 15% off site-wide using my code MyDankDog. I grew these mutants over the summer, so they've been done and dusted for a while. They kind of grow in slow motion, and I was given a warning that it takes an extra 6 weeks on top of a normal grow to get these ladies right the way through to the end. These ABCs are a tough, sneaky survivor with a story stretching back over a century. It all began in the mid-1800s when European settlers introduced the beans to Australia. Many plants escaped cultivation, went feral, and adapted to the rugged outback. Over generations, natural selection plus possible mutations created something entirely different. By the 1970s, locals in southern Australia started noticing these really weird parsley bush looking plants popping up in the wild. They have small rounded leaves, almost like a bush or a herb, very much like parsley instead of the classic finger leaflets. It's a hardy plant, frost resistant, and has a low profile. The ABC name stuck in the underground scene, popularised by breeders and forums in the 1990s and 2000s. Today, ABC remains a niche legend amongst growers. Modern breeders like bin chickens and others have crossed it and tried to keep that distinctive, stealthy look whilst boosting its strength. The mutation is recessive, and in its pure form, it's not known for massive flowers, but it is known for resilience, uniqueness, and a reminder of its wild, adaptive roots. It's a cult favourite in the global grow community. ABC proves nature always finds a way, even if it looks like nothing that we've come to expect. These were my first set of regular beans, so there's a chance that only 50% of them are going to be female, 50% of them could be male as well. It's a collaboration between Terpe's and Bin Chicken's picks, so I was really excited to get them going. I got 13 test beans to crack, and Terpe's said that they were going to be an extra 6 weeks in the grow due to the nature of the genetics. So doing the math, I had 13 beans, maybe 80% of them were going to crack, and then those remainder, 50% of those could be male and 50% of those could be female. So maybe I was going to get 4 plants out of this. If you do the math, we would see. The first bean started to crack after about 36 to 48 hours. After 48 hours, I took the rest of the beans out and placed them between a damp paper towel until they cracked. Only 9 beans cracked, and the longest took 9 days. Once the bean had a taproot of about 1 centimetre to 2 centimetres, I potted it in some peat pucks. Now, these peat pucks are awesome. They're about 20 cents each, and you expand them in water. Basically, they take up no space, and I prefer them over stone wool and rock wool cubes. They're basically like little discs, and I expand them with spring water, and then they just kind of puff out, and you don't really need to re-water them that often as well. They hold onto the moisture really nicely, and also they're made out of a similar medium to the 70% cocoa and 30% perlite that I'm going to be repotting them into at a later stage. A lot of these beans were very mutated from the beginning, and I couldn't work out whether that was part of the actual normal growth or whether some of them were mutated or unmutated. This one had a trifoliate cotyledon, 3 cotyledons, so she looked a little bit crazy, or he looked a little bit crazy. I couldn't tell whether it was a male or a female just yet. Others looked really normal. It was a mixed batch, so this one obviously came out pretty normal, pretty standard. All of them grew really, really slowly, probably about another 30% slower than your regular kind of beans. It was really cool just to see the leaves setting out and starting off in the manner that they're going to grow into, this really kind of herb parsley-like formation. As soon as the pucks showed signs of roots growing out of the bottom, I transplanted them into bud cups in a mix of 70% cocoa and 30% perlite. No nutrients yet, just spring water. And as you can see, it's very staggered the way that these ladies are growing. I had 3 up front, and in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, but only 50% of these could be ladies and 50% could be males. So you are counting them, and the beans were not growing uniformed or in any kind of way that I was used to. It was extremely slow, and I was a little bit paranoid and a little bit nervous about the way that they were growing. I just couldn't kind of, get to grips with the change in pace. If I was to grow these again, I'd definitely be a lot more patient, because I was just expecting them to grow quicker and I thought there was something wrong, but these beans were just kind of slow to do everything. As you can see, I had 6 that I ended up transplanting. There was one that was still in a peat puck. It was the one that took 9 days to crack the bean on. So if I do the math here, 50% of these are probably going to be female, 50% are going to be male. So maybe I'm going to walk away with 3 females. That's a constant kind of thing that was going through my mind as I was growing these regular beans. Also, there's a little bit of paranoia. You've been sent test beans, 13 of them, 9 of them crack, and then basically at the moment I've only really got 7 in my hand, and one that's kind of struggling that is about 9 days behind the others. So there's kind of a pressure when you've been given test beans and you're supposed to be documenting it as well, because basically you don't want to screw it up. So there was that thing that was going on in the back of my mind as well. But at least I had 6 in the bag, so theoretically I should have those 3 females. And then I was thinking, what was I going to do if there was any males? Is there any kind of pollen that I could collect? Is that an option for me to go into kind of doing some crosses of my own? I had all of that going through my mind. But basically, as I was watching these ladies grow, it was fantastically just like weird just to watch, but awesome as well, because they just grow like a completely weird, just weird in general. They're very, very different, very, very slow, as I've mentioned a ton of times, but the formation and just the kind of structure of these ladies is very different too. The other thing I was trying to do was pay close attention to the difference in leaves on each one of these plants. So as you can see, they're very varied. I was hoping to see some kind of uniformity where, one had a slightly different shape that might be female and the other one had a slightly different shape that might be male. But basically, they were all pretty much random. They all shared this very unique kind of herb look, but were also kind of random in the way that they were growing their leaves as well. So it wasn't necessarily anything that I could identify that would kind of split them up. They were all just kind of really weird and mutated, which is kind of cool. But also I was just looking for something that was going to alleviate the kind of paranoia that I had that all of these weren't going to be dudes. It was just a case of letting them grow and then waiting when I actually put them into the 12-12. So yeah, a bit weird waiting, seeing, looking at them. And I'd also told myself that I wasn't going to do any training on these ladies as well, that I would just let them grow naturally. I had no idea how tall they were going to grow, so I was basically going to guesstimate as to kind of like when I was going to change the lights over. But as you can see from all of these, they were growing very different to each other. There are obviously some similarities in the structures, but they all had very different ways of growing as well. So I didn't want to interfere with that kind of structure or pattern, not knowing how they grew. So I made that decision not to do any kind of training on them and just let them grow out as natural as possible. I wasn't even intending to do any defoliation on them, just because I didn't know how fast they regenerated or actually started to grow lower branches or where everything was going to be. So I just let them be, decided to let them grow as natural as possible and just kind of stand off and observe them, which was a good decision to make, especially as they got into their maturity and you change the lights over, because the differences in all of these plants was quite wide and quite varied, and you'll see that in later episodes. This was the last addition to the beans that were actually successful and got past the cracking stage and the sprouting stage. She was 9 days behind the others and just growing super slow. As you can see, she's really stunted. And when you realize that I tried to crack these beans all at the same time, you can get a good idea of just the kind of differences in the way that all of them are growing. And basically, I just had to change my mindset. This was a test grow with test beans that were not necessarily stable, that were going to show lots of different traits, that were going to be slow growing to medium growing. None of them were fast growing, I can tell you that. And variance in kind of male, female. So yeah, I had to kind of change my mindset and just kind of relax and basically observe, because there was no real standard to how these plants were going to turn out, other than the fact that they were going to show ABC traits, and other than the fact that I knew that I was going to have some males and some females. So I had to basically just chill out a bit and change my mindset and realize that this was not my standard kind of grow, and I was growing for different reasons, much more of a kind of experiment, document how they were growing with kind of, no map as to how they were actually going to turn out. So very different mindset to growing these. I did give these plants a boost with their roots by adding some mycorrhizal inoculant to the mix of 70% cocoa and 30% perlite. I wasn't giving them any nutrients at this moment, but I did realize that I was probably going to have to cut back the ppms and cut back the dosages if these ladies were growing so slow. I had no idea how they were going to change. Maybe they were going to grow quicker when they were in later stages, but I did realize that I was probably going to have to feed them less and less often with less ppms just to avoid that kind of burn. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Stay tuned for the next episode. Keep all of the likes, all the comments, all of the feedback coming. I do appreciate it. Also, check out my other mutant and freak videos that I've started and posted recently. Until the next episode, guys, bye-bye.